rafraîchissent d'ici là. Premier chrono de référence de la journée, 2 minutes 20 secondes 0,98 réalisé par Laurent Contour, l'équipier de Barber et de Timo Bernhard ce matin, à l'occasion de la séance d'essai libre numéro 1, la Porsche 911 GT3R de Custine 75 Bernhard, qui avait devancé Laurent Contour en autre belge, Maxime Martin. Ils sont aux avant-postes, tant mieux, c'est prometteur. La Blancpain AMR numéro 62 de Martin, et donc de Paris également, et de Mathieu Maximière, qui avait quant à elle tourné en 2,20,335.
Here at the 2019 Total 24 Hours of Spa, we are in business. The pre-qualifying session is underway. David Addison and John Watson trackside. The session has been underway for a little while, but we now can focus on not necessarily times, but more perhaps the cars and the people that we're going to be looking at over the course of the weekend, because although we've got this track time, they've had the bronze test early in the week, they've had free practice this morning, there's pre-qualifying, there's qualifying, there's night practice, there's super pole, John, but ultimately, as soon as we go racing on Saturday, all this gets forgotten about, and we're in business for a mega 73-car race.
Mind-boggling. I just dropped my towel. 73 cars, well, only 72. The 73rd is actually something that purports to be a Porsche, probably a GT3 RS,
right,
but clothed in the skin of a Herbie VW Beetle.
Okay.
I don't know why they went to mold it. I've got a VW Beetle.
There it is.
There it is.
So this is
the real thing for a fraction of the price.
If only one were homologated. That's the car that Loic de Man has to share with, amongst others, Mark Dewey. And there it is, the Herbie Porsche. Gosh, it's not quite got the right number, has it? It's number 50 rather than 53. But
it is one of one, therefore its value is considerable.
Well,
and
it's
running at a very good lick.
It's entered as a 1969 tribute. There you can see the entrant of the car, Stéphane Lemeray, shown as being behind the wheel of it. Now, this session then, on a baking hot track, on a baking hot afternoon, are we thinking about times, or is this really just to cycle people through?
Well, time set in free practice this morning, and I'm delighted to say El Bamber, Timo Bernhard and Lawrence Van Thor, that is, not Dries, in the number 117 Porsche GT3 RS are 2 minutes 20.09. So that's the benchmark. Quickest right now, Maximilian Buch, 2:20.3. Very close to the times from this morning. That may be a tyre-related issue. Track, of course, ambient high, ambient ridiculous. Track temperature is probably off the radar. But with a fresh set of rubber, then obviously the time will come. And once you get through the one lap and that tyre is at its freshest, then everything else probably will begin to incrementally fall back.
So there, 91 Porsche. Now that's a car that will fall back in the race. Ralph Bohn, Carrera Cup Germany driver, is at the wheel of it, but that we know has already picked up a stop-go penalty for the course of the race, because while the other teams and drivers went through the parade into the drivers' briefing last night, the team stayed back at the ranch and practiced pit stops.
But they didn't do it with the race car. They had a sort of a identical car at spare. So the spare car was the car that they apparently, I understand, careful how I say this, but that was the car that they were practicing pit stops on, which was giving the team an advantage over everybody else in the field, who were all down glad-handing and waving and whatever down in the village or the town or the city of Spa-Francorchamps.
It's interesting, and the stewards have come down upon that. We've got our first spinner of the session, incidentally, which is 00. Now, this is the charmingly named Good Smile Racing and Tight Moon Racing Mercedes of Nobuteru Taniguchi, Tatsuya Katioka, and Adam Christodoulou. And that car has had a spin and rejoined, and if I wade through 70-plus times, I'll try and work out who's driving it. Taniguchi, the former Drift King, behind the wheel of it.
So really all we're doing is, at the minute, car spotting, rather than focusing on, right now, the 999 Mercedes-Benz Maximilian Buch in the Team Group M Racing. And that's the car that currently is still the quickest car. So Maximilian Buch still, no, he's not, he's come into the pits. In fact, they've done a driver change, and now they have. So Lucas Auer has now gotten behind the wheel. He will go out on track.
Yeah.
And in fact, René Rast in the #1 Audi has just popped up, having stepped out of his DTM Audi after another battle, and he's got second quickest. So getting accustomed to driving a GT3 Audi as opposed to a DTM Audi, slight differences in levels of downforce, and of course, you're allowed to do that now. Apparently, there is no penalty for cutting the curve on the inside of the top radio.
Okay.
And it's sort of a bit of a controversial subject, because by allowing people to do it, and there's been 2 big accidents at the top of radio or in that area over the last morning and last night. So whether that's going to be an area that needs to be reconsidered as a no-go area, or whether it will be allowed to stay as it currently is, as we just saw there now, will be something to be seen over the course of the next few days.
Number 6 Mercedes there, one of the very many Mercedes on the grid. This is Hubert Haupt for Black Falcon. You've got a number of Mercedes teams, a bit like Audi, there's Audi Sport teams. You've got Mercedes AMG team, and then you've got the isolated team. So this is a Black Falcon team, not Mercedes AMG team Black Falcon.
But remember the #4 Black Falcon Mercedes, and that's one of the very, very strong entries indeed. Jelmer Berman joining Lucas Stoltz and Maro Engel. And think about 24 hours.
Yeah.
That's a car, in my opinion, that's going to be around at the end of 24 hours.
I mean, picking a winner is almost impossible in this. If you get through the first couple of laps, because there's bound to be some strife, surely, with 70-plus cars, then you'll have done well. And picking a winner, well nigh impossible. Yesterday, for example, I had a wander over to the Porsche area, and coming the other way were the 9 Rover Racing drivers who were back from a photo shoot. And I looked around and I thought, blimey, that's a stellar lineup right there. And that's only 3 cars. There's 36 in the pro class. That's outstanding. That's a race in itself.
I mean, talking to some of the competitors a couple of weekends ago in Zandvoort, and just, standing, doing a bit of armchair quarterback chat to some of the team drivers, team owners, and said, well, who do you think, looking into your own little crystal balls, will be your principal competitors? There is possibly one of them.
Absolutely.
One of 4 factory Bentleys, 2 in the centenary colours and 2 in the traditional colours of British Racing Green. And the other team that I was slightly surprised about, but actually you think about it, look down the entry list of some of the Ferraris, and there are exceptionally strong driver lineups in some of those cars. And the Ferrari is a car, we know how quickly it is. We've seen it won, I think, at Silverstone.
That's right.
The 3 hours. We sort of tend to overlook them because there's going to be only 1 or 2 running in the Pro Series. A lot of them are very popular in the AM Series. But a car which actually, from its conception, was designed as a race car that was built into a road car, whereas a lot of other GT cars are road cars that have been adapted to the circuit. The Ferrari held in very high esteem by a lot of significant names in the paddock.
And it's interesting to see how many more Ferraris and how many factory Ferrari drivers are here. Ferrari clearly is here to win this race, and equally Porsche is here to win this race. We're looking at Bentley, and John's made the point about its centenary year. Bentley with 4 cars, not here on holiday either. Take Porsche, here's one that we don't see very often within Blancpain, but we do in the ADAC GT series, the KUS Team 75 Bernhardt entry. It's Albamba at the wheel of it at the moment. Now, Porsche should have really, by rights, won the Nürburgring 24 hours, put a lot of effort in, led, got a late race penalty of 5.5 minutes and lost out to Audi. Bad news. Worse, 2 weeks later, the second place car was excluded for a technical infringement. That looked bad. So Porsche is here with a mission to, okay, we might have lost Nürburgring, but we're going to win Spa.
Again, going back to that conversation, a lot of people think that Porsche are very, we know they're better. Somebody was coming out of the pit. That pit lane exit, if you catch that view just very suddenly and you see a car, it looks as if a car's gone off on the top of radio. In fact, it's a car making that very sort of circuitous route all the way up to the pit lane exit. So Porsche, along with Bentley and Ferrari, who are not necessarily as in-depth, strong as we're going to see them here this weekend, potential, again, people to keep an eye on.
Absolutely, and the more we go through the weekend, the more star names, star cars, star teams you'll find. Schnitzer's BMW and Earl Bamber, double Le Mans winner, then comes down through Bruxelles.
Just talking about Ferrari, Alessandro Pierguidi in the number 51 Ferrari, just incidentally just pops up into fourth place.
Exactly, yes.
You know, just casually rolls it into fourth place.
Down towards Pouhon. Years gone by, that was a long runoff area of grass, and if you got on that, you were in all sorts of strife. Now it's a bit kinder to you with the tarmac runoff area. It then creates all sorts of other foibles, like the track limit abuse section.
Interesting, with Zandvoort moving forward into Grade 1 circuit regulations, the suggestion is that they're not going to tarmac everything. They're going to leave gravel everywhere, and the drivers think it's wonderful.
Okay, we'll wait and see. I have recollections of doing an event at Zandvoort in the wet where every race was a combination of safety cars and red flags, because as soon as somebody went off, they were ensnared and couldn't go anywhere. Whether it's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. If people treat it with respect and keep out of strife, it will be all right. Earl Bamber, let's just dwell on him for a second, because the Porsche is 10th, but he's not really doing that much of a job in the sectors at the moment, so this isn't going to be an improvement. He's up behind the RJN Nissan, and he'll get through on the inside there. 2 Nissans this week.
Honda.
Sorry, Honda. Sorry.
There is a Nissan KCMG.
Yes, old habits die hard.
I know. Oh. I know. Don't often catch you out, do I?
Apology, Bob Neville. Honda Acura, really. And we got 2 of those. That was the point I was trying to get to, with the Motul Honda in the entry as well. All of that, he says, trying to find some way out of this sentence. Earl Bamber doesn't even improve after all of that. He did get past the Honda, but didn't improve his lap time.
I mean, I don't know what teams are doing right now. Lap time still a fraction off, 2.5 tenths off what we saw from the 117 Porsche Earl Bamber. I imagine most people, Fred Makovicky in the 998 Porsche, he's just popped up into 5th place just to keep things on the boil. So I don't think anybody is going out on a brand new set of Pirelli tires in a session that is not going to have any bearing on the grid for tomorrow's race. And of course then you've got the Super Pole as well. So even if you end up quickest in qualifying, you may not have pole position, because that will be determined by Super Pole as a separate qualifying event. That's
right, so that's to look forward to tomorrow evening. Coming up at
Is it
about
going to be dry
7:15.
tomorrow evening? Or
Depends whose forecast you want to believe. Some people are saying it's going to be dry today, tomorrow, but wet for the race. Others are saying there's going to be some rain tomorrow. How many years ago was it that Super Pole was washed out? 5 or 6 years? We've had an improvement from Romain Dumas, who is an expert at going up hills quickly, like Pikes Peak and Goodwood.
What Romain Dumas, what is he driving?
An electric Volkswagen, but now he's in a Porsche, and he's gone 3rd. The car that makes a noise. But Romain, very, very rapid and versatile driver. Races, rallies, hill climbs, you name it. Now, what about Lamborghini's chances this weekend? We tend to associate them more with winning the sprint races, but Christian Engelhardt here for the Grasser Racing team could spring a surprise.
Yes, but at this part of the track, when they had the test here a few weeks ago, Mirko Bortolotti went off pretty heavily. And I don't know why, whether he caught maybe a curb or maybe there was another issue we didn't get to the bottom of it. I don't know why, but the FFF1 Lamborghini team, the team that Andrea Caldarelli is very much involved in, not just as a driver but also in the management, has begun to eclipse, I feel, the Grasser Racing. And I've noticed differences in the 63 Lamborghini and the 563 FFF Racing. The 2 cars are identical, almost the color scheme is almost identical as well. But on the racetrack, you can see significant differences in the way each car handles, and the way, in fact, each driver is able to make use of what he's got. And I just wonder what's going on in the development sort of pace of the Grasser Racing team as opposed to the FFF Racing, I would say at the minute, the car that Caldarelli is driving, of all the Lamborghinis I've seen on track over this year, looks the best car. We saw it, in fact, at Monza.
Yeah.
And then in particular, remember Dennis Lynn in the wet?
Yeah.
That car looked like it had mega grip.
Dennis
and
was
that's a symptom of what they're doing in that car.
Yeah, and Dennis was saying to me yesterday, he's looking forward to the wet because it's Lamborghini weather. So if it's
No, it's his Lamborghini.
That's his phrase.
Yes, it's his car.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the other cars within the team, but particularly the 563. Whatever way they've got that car set up, they're doing something pretty clever to make it work much better than any of the other Lamborghinis I've seen this year.
So if it is wet, watch out for Dennis Lynn for sure. Into the pits comes Christian Engelhardt. So Lucas Auer is the quickest, but the time for number 999 Mercedes set early on by Maxi Boot. Maxi Boot, Lucas Auer, Maxi Goetz, the three drivers. I mean, that's a formidable combination in itself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost speechless. The extent of the pro drivers. This is an absolutely awesome driver lineup. I mean, every manufacturer, either directly or most cases indirectly, have dragged out the best of their drivers. Gottfried Grasser having a look, and they can see that right hand. Yes, I know that feeling very well. The back end of the car is not stable. Another set of tires are going on for Christian Engelhardt. That's a set of tires that have been run. They're not a brand new set. But it's this problem, and the right hand, so the back end just isn't stable. It snaps and flicks. And certainly on a circuit like Spa-Francorchamps, what you don't want is a car that is a nervy, twitchy car. You want a car that gives you stability. You want the stability to come from the rear of the car, and you want to be able to turn the wheel and know that the back end's not going to turn around and bite you.
Does Grasser have the same relationship with Lamborghini it once did?
I think the relationship between all the independent teams is fundamentally the relationship.
Right, yeah.
There are differences, I believe, and I've got some insight into what some of the teams are doing. There are differences in terms of how each driver team have a preference over another driver team preference. But what you see on screen, what I've certainly seen on screen, and what you will see maybe as a result, indicates that there are other ways of getting performance from any race car, in this case a Lamborghini, then there's no one single path.
So there, the Valkenhorst BMW, the winning team, the surprise winning team last year. That's 34 that's come in, with Nick Katzberg, who won for BMW, but with Mark VDS at the wheel of it at the moment. He's come in. And Nick Katzberg, the Dutch driver, currently shown where in the times? 32nd and dropping, because Fred Makowiecki's Porsche now goes up to second. It's Mercedes from Porsche, 998 Fred Makowiecki, with a personal best, an absolute best, and a slightly slower third sector. Makowiecki for the Rover Racing team up to second in the times now. So it's Auer, Makowiecki, Robin Frins, Romain Dumas, Rit Brokers. Then you've got Sam Bird, Frank Stippler, Christian Engelhardt, Franck Pereira, Andrea Caldarelli is the top 10.
I mean, right now, I would say any one of those top 10, if they decided to throw on a brand new set of Pirelli rubber, would go out and immediately go to the top of the scoring and timing. And just on the subject of tyres, I met one of my colleagues not a colleague in Pirelli, an associate in Pirelli. I said, have you got enough wet weather tyres here? And they are consolidating, and they are bringing in more wet weather tyres in case of what is the projected weather for Saturday, particularly Saturday night through to Sunday, materializes. So there will be an additional a supplement of wet weather tyres being delivered to the circuit. Something like 15,000 tyres are available for this weekend, and of those the majority will be of the dry variety. But it may well be that we find ourselves using slightly more than our allocation of wet weather tyres due to unprecedented rain.
Well,
biblical is an underestimation, apparently.
The weather,
it's going to be awful.
Europe-wide at the moment is coming up with new record figures, and then we could have record rain figures. Mauro Engel, second fastest now for Mercedes. He's just done a 2 minutes 20.34 squiggle. 6 that is. And you're riding on board now with Frank Stippler, who knows his way around here, former winner of the event. And Stippler is 9th.
Yeah, and a good, safe pair of hands in that number 2 Audi, along with Dries van Thor and Alex Riberas. Well, let's see what the top speed. Oh, we were watching the top speed. Why did you take it away? We want to see what the car's doing at 260 plus kilometers per hour.
Still climbing as you get up towards Les Combes. You're still climbing even at this point. It's only about now that it comes down the hill. So
we've now got the speed going through the comb and then acceleration down the hill into this almost never-ending 180-degree off-camberation. Where do you make your apex? Do you make 1 or 2 or just take a constant arc? Then this, again, rather nondescript. And Frankie Boy gets it very wide on the exit.
Does he ever? So Frank Stippler saves it, rattles it up over the curb at the so-called speaker's corner. So Stippler in Audi number 2, there he is. That's one of the Audi Sport Team WRT cars. That's one of the teams, therefore, which has got a former winner, in fact 2, possibly 3 former winners of the event operating the cars. Vincent Voss has won as a driver, so have Pierre Dieudonné and Thierry Tasso. Whoops! Frank Stippler is not having a good lap here, is he?
I mean, that looks to me like there's not a lot of rear grip for Frank Stippler. You can see even coming down at the bottom of the circuit, the back end of the Audi, this is the exit of call it Stavelot, and running the curb and having to battle the back of the Audi, not giving Stippler an awful lot of comfort. I mean, okay, if you're doing a short run and you're not focused on doing an hour and a half or 2 hours behind the wheel, but you want to get that. I mean, how wide does he come out of Blanchimont?
Absolutely. It's not a comfortable ride.
No,
this,
it's
is
not at all. I would just drive back in the pits and say, give it a service, chamois it down, and a new set of tires, please.
And Stippler
and he comes in.
Yes.
Frank, you're on message.
Yeah.
Even look when he accelerates in the pit lane. There's probably more rubber in the palm of my hand than there is in those rear Pirellis he's got in the Audi.
So he's down to Honest John's car sales, is he, at the end of the pit lane?
Oh, drop the honest.
In he comes with the Schnitzer BMW behind. BMW's got this extraordinary record of, is it what, 24 wins or something in the Spa 24 Hours. It's had an exemplary time, largely based, of course, on when it was a touring car race, which it was for many, many years before it became around the FIA GT Championship. And it was the Spa 24 Hours, when it was a non-championship race one year, that really was the catalyst for what we first had as the Blancpain Endurance Series.
Interesting. Norman Nato, number 10 at Belgian Audi Club with Rick Broekers and Charles Vetz. Now, when I was coming back from one of our events, walking towards immigration, passport control, another fellow passenger said, "What do you think of Norman Nato?" "Oh, what do you mean? Who are you?" Anyway, this is somebody who has been closely associated with Norman Nato, champions him, and reckons he is the next big deal coming out of France. Now, whether he gets outside of GT racing, or you might call Formula 2, he was very successful, probably still is if he was racing in it, but somebody to keep an eye on, Norman Nato in the number 10 Audi.
And where is he at the moment? Sixth. Yep, so Norman Nato doing a good job in that car, as you say, which is another of the Team WRT entries. Looking strong. And the two of the 3 FFF Racing Lamborghinis, Andrea Caldarelli in the 563, and Frank Pereira, that's the car Phil Keane was in, 519, those are the numbers, 7th and 8th quickest. And well, has Sam Bird changed his Christian name? Is he Fly Away Bird, or is it F? Who's F Bird? F Bird is
that his wife?
There's Frank Bird, who's in the Formula Renault races here, and the timing screen is listing him as F Bird. This is where our confusion came from a little earlier. But I'm sure they'll sort that out.
Maybe it's his wife's Christian name. Maybe she's driving, I don't know.
Let me ask you about that Frank Stippler lap here. I'm asking for a friend, because the editor of Motorsport News, Matt James, wonders about track limits on a lap like that, where he was up the curb. Do we ignore that because it's only pre-qualifying and he clearly wasn't gaining an advantage because the car is in trouble, or should that be looked at?
I mean, I would think that if you let drivers take advantage of track limits in a session such as we're watching right now, and you don't really impose any warnings. I mean, there's warnings coming up all the time. Car 9 must respect track limits. At turn 3, there'll be something else coming up in another minute or 2. The difference is whether they're just getting the warnings, will there be any penalty after maybe 2 or 3 warnings? I think that they should be respected all the way through a weekend. Yeah. Personally, there's the black, the thing we're looking at there through the windscreen, the black bit is the racetrack. The grass on the outside is not the racetrack. The curbs are there to define the corner.
Sure.
They're not there to be used to take advantage of. I took great pride in driving as a race driver on what I considered to be the racetrack. And a lot of my junior contemporaries, you know, they drove all over the curbs and did everything they wanted to do. And I was struggling to say, well, why am I not going any quicker? I realized if you took the curbs and most of the corners, you'd probably be a second a lap quicker. But there we are, two cars. One of the Mercedes likewise creeping down the hill. Very, very, is that a puncture? I can't quite see. Is that the 88? I can't make up my mind. It's just the picture we've got on our screen. Is it? It is the 88.
Yeah.
And that's the left. Is that a left front or a left rear? It looks like maybe it could be a left rear puncture.
That's the Vincent Abril, Fabian Schiller, Raffaele Marciello car.
I can't really, on this tiny little screen we've got to commentate off, decide whether that's a tyre or a mechanical issue.
Explain to me as well what's happened to Michael Meadows for this race. I can't find him
He's
on the
not in the
list.
car.
No.
I mean, it appeared to me that there was a shuffle going on within the ACA ASP, and Michael looked to be getting the short end of the stick. I don't know if there's a particular reason for that or not. Something that the team would probably be best to shed more light on.
Wondered if you'd heard from one of your airport fellow travellers.
Norman Nato was the only one that was, but no doubt if I hang around airports long enough, somebody will come up with an explanation. Well, depending whether we've got a strike or not, I suppose.
Or quite. 188, Alexander West in the AM Cup, of course. In the Garage 59, Aston Martin heading up towards the timing line. We've got 26.5 minutes of this pre-qualifying session to go, of which Maxi Goetz is now into the quickest Mercedes, and Jelmer Berman has taken over the second fastest Mercedes. So it's Merc 1-2. Patrick Pilet now drives 998. Robin Frins has pitted in the number 1 Audi. Best Lamborghini 7th, Marco Mappelli.
Again, everybody is using the inside curb at the top of radio. I mean, all 4 wheels are off the racetrack. From what I was told earlier today, that's going to be apparently permitted. Personally, I don't think it should be allowed, but those are my views as an old broken down racing driver who's got old-fashioned views and, you know, hang them and flog them. We've got a new Home Secretary. She's a bit of a hanger and a flogger, apparently.
We only have 25.5 minutes to go in this session. Tragically, not enough time to discuss Britain's political week. I was trying to find a stronger word, but I thought better of it. 25 minutes and change on the clock. Car 10 must respect track limits, John. That's the Nato Wirtz Brokers Audi, and Norman Nato is the man behind the wheel of it at the moment.
72 Ferrari, up to 11th place. So again, Ferrari is going to be the sleeper team, I think, here this weekend. 72 won at Silverstone the 3 hours, and it's a great car.
Yeah,
it's a really, really nice car in every context for all 3 drivers across the team.
So Mikael Alyoshin up to 11th. Who else has improved? Jay Dennis for Aston Martin, our motorsport, up to 22nd fastest now, 221.599. And at the moment, on a 7-kilometre long circuit, the fastest 15 covered by less than a second.
The 88 Mercedes, it's Fabian Schiller behind the wheel. That was the Mercedes we saw coming very slowly, driving around the outside of Poolhall. And hopefully it'll have made its way back up into the pit lane. Again, track limits coming out of Blanchimont. All 4 wheels off the racetrack, you know.
59 Aston is under investigation for speeding in the pit lane. So that's the...
There is, sorry, there's the 88 just making its way. There's a bit of a bottleneck logjam just coming into the chicane, and it's all because of the 88 Mercedes going really slowly on its approach into the pit lane.
Now, who's at the wheel of 59?
A load of understeer there for the Aston Martin. Well, that was a Nissan, beg your pardon.
Johnny Adam is behind the wheel of 59, and he's under investigation for speeding in the pit lane. The stewards have been busy already, and we've barely started the weekend. No wonder there are teams of them.
Good to see Oliver Jarvis behind the wheel of a GT3 here at Spa.
Yeah.
He's behind the wheel of the 19... No, it's not 19.
18.
18, I beg your pardon, yes. Yes, KCMG. Eduardo Libertat, I can't pronounce his name. Libertati and Alexander Imperatori.
Yeah, KCMG's Nissan it is. Their other car has been glued back together after a monster accident in the Nürburgring 24 hours. Josh Burden was slowing for a slow zone and the man behind him didn't and just cannoned into him. That car was destroyed, but Josh Burden is back behind the wheel of it for this race. I know that they are two completely different events, but many of the teams do the pair these days. That's the view out of La Source, heading down the hill. Alyoshin's improvement we've given you, Jake Dennis's improvement we've looked at as well. But of course, after this, we get to the pointy end of the night, don't we? We get towards qualifying and the 4 parts that we have now, because many of the Pro-Am cars have 4 drivers for this race.
Yes, that's a lot easier, particularly when some of the AMs are not overly keen on the darker hours. And I mean, it does get dark here at night time, unlike in Le Mans, for example, the hours of darkness are not quite so dark as they are here.
Just quickly to say, full course yellow in 10 seconds. We've got a car off, or the race director is doing a test, but the full course yellow, there.
I suspect it is a test.
So Alain Adam is the race director, and he looks after all of the Blancpain GT World Challenge Europe races, amongst others, as well as French GT. Very experienced race director, and getting the teams ready. There's debris on the track, in fact, that's the reason. So at turn 8, which is what, Bruxelles, down towards Speaker's Corner, this area.
Yes, this area. But just looking at the tracker map we have on our screen, it's like rush hour. I mean, it's 72 cars. They must all be out, pretty much all be out right now. I've never seen a racetrack.
No.
The only place where you haven't got any traffic is down at turns 12 and 13, and then 14 down to Stavolo. But elsewhere, they're tripping over each other.
Somebody worked out that with the length of the lap, we're back on green flag incidentally, but with 72 cars, that was a car every 12 metres.
Well, that'll be fun in the dark and the rain.
Will it ever? Will it ever? Yeah. Marshals are going to be busy. Drivers are going to be busy.
You hit the nail on the head. The big unsung heroes here this weekend will be those marshals.
Yeah.
Because they've got a massive field, and there will be a huge amount of bunching. Usually what happens is you get bunches of cars, maybe 8 or 10 or possibly a dozen cars all humming around close proximity, then you'll get gaps. So there are the unsung heroes, the marshals, and whatever the debris issue was, it mustn't have been particularly serious, but it's been rectified and back to race speed up the hill into the chicane.
I mean, you say they're the unsung heroes, you're right, and they've had a weekend of it even before we get to the 24 hours, because the track is great for the fans, but as soon as you get here on Thursday morning, it's busy, busy, busy. There's qualifying, there's practice, there's warm-up sessions, there are lots and lots of support races. By 4:30 on Saturday,
promotional activities.
Absolutely, you've had a weekend of it, and they have been on post, and then they've got a 24-hour race to do. There is the SMP Racing Ferrari in the pit lane, 7th fastest. A dark horse, a dark prancing horse for a win this weekend.
Marco Mappelli is about to go out in the 563 Lamborghini, as is Giovanni Venturini in the sister car. So Sam Bird, or his twin brother F. Bird, wait to find out. That one, Engelhardt's in. Jules Gugnon has, I think, just about left the pit lane. Dirk Werner. Matchel. Good job, Matchel, in that 33 Lamborghini. No, it can't be Matchel. 33. Alexander Matchel, I beg your pardon. It is Matchel.
Yeah, the Rinaldi Ferrari.
Yeah.
Although he may have taken that over from a Hendrik Still or a Manuel Laut to do the time. Didn't see there. 63 about to go out. Christian Engelhardt was behind the wheel of it.
Of course, in this evening's nighttime practice, mandatory that every driver does a minimum number of laps to qualify. If you don't do it, then you don't get to race. And those teams that have got 4 drivers to filter through, siphon through, puts a lot of pressure, because to get 5 or 6 consecutive laps in, then come in, do your driver change, get back out again. Manan Donche in the 66 Attempter Racing, Audi down the run. Oh, Porsche.
So that is
has that gone off?
The Emmanuel Vinca car, I think.
Up at Les Combes.
Yeah.
Spun on the entry into Les Combes.
No, it is Soradaji who's lost a spot. I'm looking at the Lumi rank. He's lost a place while he's been off the road. He's 61st in the times now.
So he's getting himself sorted out. He's got a gaggle of cars. Something just popped off the back of that Porsche. I don't know whether it was something laying on the racetrack that got kicked up, or whether it was a bit of bodywork that might have become dislodged when he spun backwards into the grass. So coming back at a more leisurely pace, and of course then finding people at race pace sort of tripping over the blue Porsche number 21.
The joy of Twitter is that somebody out there listening on the live stream but trackside tells me that there are spots of rain up at Les Combes.
Really?
And it could be heading this way.
Well,
it has gone grey.
David, when I drove here today, it was almost unbearable.
Yeah.
I mean, we're wearing black, our team gear is black. Well, mine, I look like a zebra because I've been sweating so much, the salt and the sweat. I could walk around, I could go into a herd of zebra and nobody would find me. But
even there, I think you would stand out, John. There is only one John.
Only on 2 legs, not on 4. But as you point out, the clouds are rolling in. We are at Spa, for goodness sake. You don't have good weather at Spa for... You do when you don't have an event.
Yeah, but
as soon as the event rocks up and there's somebody else.
That's the replay, isn't it, of the Porsche going off. Patrick Kujala for Barwell Motorsport, the Lamborghini out of the Pro-Am squad, has gone to the top of the times, 2 minutes 20.123. So Patrick Kujala up to the top for Barwell. He's the pro within a Pro-Am car.
Excuse me.
Was that track limits, John?
I mean, you must be pulling my whatever. And that is just nuts. Now, this little Porsche 21, don't see it in my timing and scoring, but anyway, it's trundling around.
That's the one that had the spin.
Yes, the one that had the spin. Ken comes in rather slowly, looking at the Aston, coming out of Blancpain. Well, he could have ended up in Malmedy almost. He was so far off track.
Many drivers new to the circuit. They're trying to learn. They're trying to keep out of the way. They're trying to set times. All of these things. Where's the best of the Bentleys? It is Andy Soucek's 7th. Yep. Interestingly
separated from Maxime Soule for pretty much the first time, I think. Maybe. But certainly he is in a car with Luca Ladonius, who also, of course, comes from the Nissan team. So that's an interesting setup with Peppo Durrani, Ladonius and Soucek. So a very Latin-based driver lineup in that car.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. This is Miguel Molina, who's taken over from Mikhail Alyoshin in the SMP Racing Ferrari. And he's on the climb now, up Radion, heading towards Les Combes.
Let's see what speed the Ferrari achieves before he gets on the brakes. So about 254, maybe just under 255. Thought maybe it'd been a little bit quicker, thought maybe 260 plus. But of course, this is not a qualifying attempt. On a qualifying attempt, undoubtedly there will be that little bit quicker. Certainly fresher tyres will get you up and through Eau Rouge and Radion, and you can carry that speed all the way down.
And that part of the circuit just keeps on climbing and climbing. And even as you go into Les Combes, it's still climbing.
David, it's only climbing and climbing because you ran it last night. In a road car, it's quite flat.
Thank you for your support, John. I will always wear it. I'll tell you, I didn't realise it was as steep as it was and how many bits of this place go uphill. It was quite a 40 minutes that last night. Right, here, Molina is on a mission. Through the traffic, down towards the Piff Paff. Turn right, flick left. And he's got, whisper it, clear road ahead of him for a moment. You come over the brow here, there's a campsite straight ahead of you. Eager fans looking over the circuit, and then fighting the car, he goes through campus.
And every burger will be a full fat burger. Yeah. None of this lean beef burger, full fat baby, and a big Belgian beer.
Absolutely. I did discover last night there is now a alcohol-free left Belgian beer. I think the world is officially broken, I have to say. What is the world coming to? This is Molina's view to the bus stop.
That's how you go through Blancpain. You don't need to run off into the countryside.
We have a driving standards flag for 44, the Stracker Mercedes of Tristan Vautier, Lewis Williamson and Gary Paffett. And who is behind the wheel? Got to go a long way down the times. I've lost him. Where's 44 Mercedes? Forgive the pause because there's 70 cars to try and wade through on our timing screens. Lewis Williamson is at the wheel.
We haven't mentioned the 43 Stracker Mercedes as yet, have we?
No, but that didn't have a great start through the bronze test. Tell me more.
No.
Christina Nielsen was behind the wheel and the car had an off.
Was it her fault or the car's fault?
It depends who you talk to. The car has suffered a serious amount of damage.
And that they're going to sort of bring in another rolling chassis, I understand.
Yeah, try and effectively replace the car.
And because this happened in the bronze test, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Technically, the event hadn't started.
Correct.
So she will be allowed, or that car, the 43 car, will be allowed to qualify, and wherever it qualifies is where it'll start.
That's right. The bronze test is just that. It's a test session. It's not officially part of the event. The event starts with free practice. So if anybody has a problem, like Sally Yorok, for example, who crashed the 97 Aston Martin this morning, if you have problems from here on in, then penalties may come. But that was outside the event.
Jules Gougnot, 107 Bentley, 4th quickest. Again, a car that everybody thinks in the centenary year for Bentley. I mean, it would be almost unbelievable to think that for the effort that has been made, and of course Brian Gush also, who's been a part of the Bentley team for goodness 25 or more years. I think this might be his last event before he goes off to the long grass.
That's right, he's retiring, yep. So it would be a perfect way to go out. It was Brian Gush that oversaw the Le Mans 24-hour win and then said, we'll be back, and admittedly a long time later, Bentley was back in GT3. The Straka warning about track limits has now been changed from 44 to 444, which is the Philip Vlachik, Florian Scholzer, and he's Scholzer behind the wheel of it, Ferrari, an AM car.
Keep an eye on Jamie Green, Audi 129, purple in the first sector.
Okay.
Another DTM driver, of course. Very successful single-seater racer for a number of years in his infancy.
Yeah.
Then he was actually a Brit. He's now a German Brit as opposed to a Brit.
I think
you had him in the commentary booth, I believe.
At Silverstone. He's a Brit again because he's come back to live in the UK now. But he was a Monaco-based Brit for a long, long time. But he spent so much of his time racing, as you say, for Mercedes and then Audi in the DTM. He drives for the Land Motorsport team, Jamie Green. One of 2 drivers on the grid that cut their teeth in mini-stocks racing in stock cars, but he's 19th fastest, or the car is 19th fastest, and he should be an improver, traffic permitting, because he's down in that middle sector. Alex McDowell goes across the timing line. Jules Gounod's up to 4th, I think you'd said. Mikkel Christensen is up to 7th, number 20 Porsche. And there is the green Audi of Jamie Green, and what does the lap time do? Puts him where in the times?
Well, so 19.
19, yeah. Was it an improvement? No, it wasn't. He lost out in the traffic. This is the team of Wolfgang Land, winners of ADAC GT events, winners of the Nürburgring 24 Hours.
Again, look, I mean, I'm going to pull whatever hair I've got left out by watching everybody doing the shortcut at the top of radio. Raffaele Marciello, just for those fans of the back ASP 88 Mercedes, we saw that car limping in very slowly with Vincent Abreu behind the wheel. Well, now Raffaele Marciello has slipped his tall, slender frame in behind the wheel, and he is going to go out on track and see if he can do anything better than the 1:21.352 that car has recorded for 23rd quickest time. How many we've got? 16 cars covered by just under a second. And we've got Ricky Collard just outside that second in the 762 Aston Martin.
That's right, yes.
Funny number. Normally they run 62.
Well, there is a 62, so they've got a 3rd car. So they go with the 7.
762.
Yeah.
So Ricky Collard behind the wheel of the 762 Aston Martin, 17th place. The car is 17th. And otherwise, there isn't really. There's a few personal gains in some of the sectors, but we're not seeing with what just under 10 minutes, 9 minutes, 20 odd seconds. Jamie Green slips up the inside of the Porsche, but not comfortably sure that the Porsche knows that the Audi is up the inside, so had to back out of it and consequently loses the momentum. Now, how steep is this when you're running the track, David?
Well, as it's at the end of the lap, it feels a lot steeper than it was. It's still a little bit of a climb.
Were your little diddy men legs really struggling?
They were at this point. They were at this point. I went from the bus stop to the bus stop, never found the bus, so I had to run it. There's Jamie Green up to the end of the lap and into the pit lane. Jamie loving this because he comes from the DTM where you get 10 race weekends a year and it's the same type of racing, whereas this is a circuit he doesn't race at very often, against people he doesn't race at very often. It's a real contrast, a really welcome change. Not that he doesn't enjoy the DTM, but just something fresh.
It's refreshing.
Really exactly.
It's refreshing. And also, I mean, DTM is a sort of formula, what's the word? Formula Attic or Formula Matic or whatever it is, formula. I mean, they run a lot of spec parts. Whereas if you're driving an Audi, you have to say it's a significantly different car to a Bentley.
Absolutely.
Or to a Mercedes.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing it's got in common with a Porsche is the engine's a rear engine, but the Audi's not rear engine, it's mid-engine. The Porsche's the only true rear engine car here. Rain on the windscreens down at Stavolo.
Interesting. This is the BMW. Augusto Farfus at the wheel of it. The Schnitzer BM comes through Blanchimont. Now that rain's not doing enough to give people palpitations yet, but it's interesting that it's in the air.
Well, it won't give people palpitations. I mean, Farfus has been driving through it and he didn't seem to have any concerns. But if it continues for another 2 or 3 minutes, then that'll be a different scenario down at the bottom, the lowest point of this 4-mile Spa-Francorchamps circuit.
Wet track, lights on, says the race director, Alain Adon. Gabriele Piana has just got quicker, 221.148. Piana with a little bit of a redemption exercise to do this weekend because he had some rather questionable driving standards at the Nürburgring 24 hours. There in 108, Bentley.
Maxime Soulet behind the wheel, apparently.
Okay,
showing 19th place.
Source. That's the Soulet, Buncombe, Paltela car, Marcus Paltela, an event winner.
Yeah, and good to see Alex Buncombe consolidating. Again.
That's a strong
I'm
car.
going to stop commentating on that. Whatever they're going to do, they're going to do it. I don't give a whatever. But Alex Buncombe drove himself into that seat at Monza in the 3 hours in a difficult race condition as well.
And this is a race that his father did many, many times in Ford Caprice when it was a touring car race. Jonathan Buncombe used to partner with Vince Woodman, but we're looking at Maxime Soulet. Of course, he wants to win because he's a racing driver. He wants to win everything, but of course he's the Belgian, so he wants a home win as the car just quivers ever so slightly coming down to Bruxelles here. They look good in this colour scheme, don't they?
Yeah, they race in America, I think, in that colour scheme, and it's sort of, I suppose one might say, traditional for Bentley to race in that British racing green, whereas the normal M Sport race colours are the combination of white, predominantly, with green highlights.
So in Bentley's centenary year, through turns Soulet, the session's only got 6 more minutes to run, and then at 8 o'clock we get to qualifying. So there's a break of a couple of hours before we get to the qualifying session coming up later on.
I mean, just showing you how much or how little grip everybody's having to contend with. The Bentley running 4 wheels off the track. There's that coming through the exit of the little fifth valve, as it's sometimes called. Then up through the exit of Stavolo, and the thunderous, I mean, it is a thunderous noise the Bentley makes. Rain appears to have cleared from that part of the racetrack.
It does, doesn't it? It does. But that's just to say, I'm here, and I'm not going away until Monday morning. You just wait. Maxime Soulet then down through the chicane at the bus stop. This re-profile bus stop over a decade ago. And up towards the timing line. Spa has changed, of course, over the years, but it's still a great challenge for the drivers.
Wouldn't it be wonderful to see the chicane eliminated and just have a gentle curve? Now, I know the concerns would be for the poor souls who are on the pit wall. They wouldn't want a racing car travelling 180 miles an hour landing in the pit lane. But it's just a sort of an awkward, and I mean, it's meant to be an overtaking opportunity, but it's one that's easily defended. And you know, more often than not, an overtaking manoeuvre ends up in some kind of body contact. But just imagine, if you think back to the good old days, when Spa-Francorchamps ran its 8+ mile circuit, and there was a sequence of corners after Blanchimont, which were real white-knuckle ride stuff. Sort of thing you get at Thorpe Park these days.
Yeah. And if you're wondering why it's called the bus stop, and in fairness, it's starting to be known more as the chicane rather than the bus stop, but its initial incarnation on the run to where it is now, you did a left-right flick, and then a very, very short straight, and then a right-left to come back onto the old circuit.
Yeah, I raced on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that. And again, it was about how much curb do you take as to how much time do you save in the middle of the bus stop chicane.
And the stories say that it was Gordon Spice who was interviewed about it, a 124-hour race, and what do you think about this section of the circuit? He said it's dreadful, it's like a bus stop, and the name rather stuck. There, 444 in the pit lane. That's the car that was being warned about track limits earlier on. Florian Scholzer has got behind the wheel of it. Philip Vlachik had driven it.
Good looking car.
It is, yeah. It's an AM up to the Pro-Am this week because of Vlacic joining in. And they're quick. Vlacic particularly, whose father won the Nürburgring 24-hour race 2 decades ago. Vlacic is a bit of an undiscovered star, really. He's quick and he's dependable, but we've never, apart from Lamborghini Super Trofeo, seen him as a proper gun because he's always had a slower co-driver. Their Mercedes Honda, get it right this time, Mercedes. That's 999, that's the Lucas Auer car.
Yes, and that's the Maxi's car, the Book and Goods.
Surely it should be number 24, shouldn't it, for this weekend? Then it will be 24-hour. I'll get my code.
Go and have another run. I mean, Max Goods, Maxi Book, stalwarts of Blancpain.
Yes.
And we don't see them regularly in Blancpain. We see them here, obviously. But we could do with saying that the Maxi's back again on a regular basis.
And Lucas Auer, who is the nephew of Gerhard Berger, comes down to QUAL, ex-Formula 3 racer, turned DTM driver and race winner. And that car, even though it's a Mercedes, is out of, as John mentioned earlier on, the Gruppe M Racing stable. And he's going to lose track position to the Rover Porsche there.
I mean, the Mercedes is either, I think it's coming in rather than on an outlap, so keeping out of the way of the quicker the Porsche.
Nico Müller, Audi number 1, has just done an absolute best in the first sector. You're looking at Mathieu Jaminet, number 98 for Rover. Hans-Peter Naundorf's team coming now up through the Cours Paul Frère on the run to Blanchimont. Jaminet, another Porsche specialist.
Well, it actually looks like Lucas Auer has actually picked up, well, I say he's picked up pace. He's certainly picked up some of the pace, letting the BMW go through as well, coming into Blanchimont. So whether the Mercedes is just sort of hovering around looking for clear track space, likewise the Rover Porsche is about to come in as well, because the Valkenhorst BMW. So Porsche, are they going to go slow?
I'm surprised he's staying out because there's only a minute and a half to go.
Tripping over each other, basically. And Jaminet made a real mess of trying to find space. He slowed himself down a little bit too much, allowed the BMW past. He'll probably be on the tail of the BMW, depending who's behind the wheel of it right now. But
sure.
There he is. Oh, whoa, 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 wow.
Nico Müller.
Doesn't look a comfortable car either.
No. That's another WRT Audi. We saw Stippler in strife earlier. The one thing we haven't yet touched on, even though we're talking about this as the Total 24 Hours of Spa, of course, it is a round, and there are points at 6, 12 and 24 hours of the Blancpain GT World Challenge Endurance Cup, and also this is a round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli, so there are lots and lots of things at stake here.
Oh, I mean, why not? Daniel Serra up to 5th place in the Ferrari number 227, and that's a car again. Nick Foster, Nick Cassidy, bit of a sleeper.
Yeah.
A car to keep an eye on.
Daniel Serra, Chico Serra's son, the former Grand Prix racer, and he was pretty handy in Aston Martins, wasn't he, in the WEC, but now first look at him in Blancpain. Nico Müller is on his toes here as he carves his way up past the Dico Lazarus Lamborghini there, the Fernando Navarrete, Sylvain Debs, Emmanuel Vinca, Graham Davidson car. Graham Davidson, Aston Martin regular in British GT. Flag is out. We got through that without a stoppage, without any real serious drama, didn't we?
Other than abuse of track limits and that little sprinkling of rain down in Stavelot. Yeah, it went pretty smoothly, in fairness.
So we'll have a look at the times shortly, and then 8 o'clock local time you need to be back with us for qualifying, which goes for an hour and a half, and then there's a 10-minute break, and we go straight into the night practice, which is where John comes into his own, because he can spot headlights of a GT3 car like you wouldn't believe.
Well, when I get my new GT3 RS Gen 2, for those laser lights, I tell you what, they'll burn the paint on the back of your cane every day of the week.
I'm surprised you've been behind. I thought you'd have gone storming past.
I will be.
Yeah, indeed.
I will be. But, you know, I'll just make those little 2 burn marks in the back of the Cayman.
Always thinking of me, aren't you? So the session at an end, but yeah, the night practice is always quite lively, and it's useful for everybody to try and work out. There you get an example of the cars with the lights on. Of course, they've had the Paul Ricard race. Some of the teams, not everybody did that. Many have experience of other 24-hour races. There's an increasing number of them these days. Jamie Green, by the way, up to 10th on his last lap. So Jamie, with the circuit getting a bit quieter, still pushing and still improving. Through he turns.
You can see even Jamie's got a car that's very, I would say, tail happy. You wouldn't want to be committed or over aggressive on the steering wheel, but you know that's fundamentally how you get the speed out of the Audi. It's not going to be something as the Ferrari is, which is much more designed to be a track car that's adapted to road use. The Audi clearly is a road car that's adapted to track use, and just trying to get the maximum performance out. It was interesting reading an article in a magazine coming over here about the attitude that Porsche had, and when they ran cars in the 60s particularly, when aero cars were basically all about top speed, and the attitude from Porsche was, it is up to you to learn to drive the car. It is not for us to make the car comfortable. And it was actually quite an eye-opener, because you think of all the great drivers in those cars back in the 60s and early 70s, and the 917 in particular. I mean, talk about frightening.
Yes, yeah. And the 909, which was so light as well, and yeah, well, we've got a light car, now we need to put a driver in it. There was no real thought and concern about the safety of it. Right, the flag is out. That's the fastest car, but although Adrian Amstutz has taken it over, it was Patrick Kuyler that did the time. It's good to see Amstutz back here, because it was, what, 2 years ago that he had his huge accident in the night.
Horrible, horrible accident. To be trapped in a car with a car burning, not something you want to think about.
So Adrian Amstutz in the Pro-Am category this weekend came out of the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, driving for Mark Lemmer's Barwell Motorsport team. And Patrick Kuyler, who again we don't see enough of these days, just underlining how good he is by going to the top of the times. But you've got margins of tenths and then thousandths. I think the narrowest margin is 3 thousandths that splits Indy Dontje from Renger van der Zander's Honda.
Well, we're actually down to the top 22 covered by just under a second.
It's insane,
so that's
isn't it?
increased from the 15 or so I mentioned half an hour ago. So the field, I mean, it's just unbelievably intense and competitive.
And as ever, it's the time spent in the pits that's going to be the deciding factor, because if you lose even a handful of seconds in this company, you're in strife.
I've just seen something really novel. On our tracker map. All of a sudden, you've got congestion like I've never seen before on the way into Eau Rouge and on the way down the hill down to Eau Rouge and up to the top of La Source. Of course, they've got 2 separate pit lanes, and the tracker can't differentiate the pit lane from the racetrack.
That's right. So they're all there.
You know, suddenly, we've got everything coloured in blue, you know, bunched up going into La Source and bunched up coming down the hill to Eau Rouge.
And it's going to be like that when we get the safety cars and the pit stops. Let's quickly to run through the times. Patrick Kuyler, the fastest then, by 0.199 of a second from 999, the hour Buch Gotts Mercedes. Lucas Stolz Mercedes for Black Falcon, the car he shares with Mauro Engel and Jelmer Berman. Engel did that time to be third, ahead of Jules Gounon's Bentley. 227 going 5th fastest at the end of that session is the Hub Auto Corsa Asian team Ferrari. Nick Cassidy, Nick Foster, BRDC member recently. Daniel Serra at the wheel of that. And then 6th fastest, Mathieu Jaminet in the top of the Porsches. But scroll down, and we'll be a while scrolling down, I grant you, with over 70 cars. This gives you an idea. Just look at some of the teams and look at the names and look at the variety. And again, bear in mind that this is one category. We haven't got GT3 and GT4. We've not got touring cars lobbed in. This is purely GT3. And this just shows you the strength of it. With many other teams thinking, wish I was doing that now, but there isn't space in the pit lane, space on the grid for them to come and be part of the race.
And this is a big circuit.
Absolutely right. Yeah. So look down, you've got Maxime Martin, Mathieu Vazivière, Matt Parry, only 46. Now, all right, it's pre-qualifying. What does that prove? Andy Merrick, good to have him on the grid. Of course, he was knocked about quite badly here last year, so welcome back to Andy Merrick. David Pittard, 51st, along with Henry Valkenhorst. David, winner of the Nürburgring qualifying race. Adam Christo's Mercedes, with more to come, clearly only 52nd. And number 25, this is quite a concern, didn't get a lap time in. Now, 25 is Marcus Winkelhock, Fred Vervies and Christopher Haase. You would expect that to have been up there, never mind not going out.
I mean, clearly there's a technical problem. They're not trying to save tires, that's for sure.
No.
So looking into the garage, and these are the fortunate teams that are on what would be described as the Formula One pit lane. So everything's on a level, and these are modern, very spacious garages. Those that are on the exit of La Source down to Eau Rouge are all on the slope, so when it rains, and it is going to rain apparently, you're going to just be careful where you put your bits and pieces, because you end up about halfway a mile down the pit lane in Eau Rouge itself.
Let's have a quick look at the highlights then of that pre-qualifying session. A chance for people to do a bit more mileage to get themselves dialed in. We started with the Porsche Beetle, as it were, backed by Loic Deman's dealership. Loic Deman himself a very rapid racer, and in the pseudo Herbie colours. But then gradually we started to focus on Audis, largely because Frank Stippler, always worth watching, was driving a real beast of a car. He had the Jordan Pepper, Stephen Kane, Jules Gounon Bentley behind him. For the Valkenhorst squad, winners last year, can the team repeat the feat? The BMW a car to watch. We had drama up at Les Cons, 1 or 2 being squeezed out onto the grass. We also had a spin for the open road racing Porsche that went off the road. Bentley's almost coming to grief with Audis. But at the end of the session, as teams scrubbed in some new tyres, cycle drivers through the mix as well, it was an encouraging effort as far as Lamborghini was concerned. But with a Pro-Am car topping the times, what does that tell us? Well, Patrick Kujala is quickest thus far, and the action will continue here in the build-up to the total 24 hours of Spa at 8 o'clock local time. That's just over an hour and a half away, because we'll be back for that a little bit later on. For now, from David Addison and John Watson, au revoir.